Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unapologetically You with myself, Tulse, and the beautiful Kelly. Welcome to a health and wellness podcast. We use science-backed tools that support you and your family, and hopefully we can provide you with conversations that are thought-provoking, that can enable you to look after yourself and the ones you love. Today's podcast, we have the hot topic of the day is what is diaphragmatic breathing?
Diaphragmatic.
I won't edit that out. I'm going to leave that in there. Why is it important? And what other words can we use instead of that long jumbled word that I just said? Before we begin, I want to thank you for listening in, for finding us, and more importantly, for showing up for yourself. If you'd like to support what we're doing so we can keep doing it, head over to our Patreon page. You can support us for the price of a small cup of coffee. And we'd appreciate if you can share this podcast if you enjoyed it too. If you're watching us on YouTube and you see us, please hit the like button because YouTube loves likes and it will share our content when more people can engage with it. So thank you so much if you hit the like button. Without further ado, I want to welcome my gorgeous host, Kelly.
Good morning, Tulse. How are you?
Hi, Gal. How are you? I'm good.
I'm really well. How was your weekend?
Some days it just flies by. I say some days. I feel like my whole life has flown by.
It's so far, so deep into the year already.
It's crazy. Like it's not even like I'm gonna really delve deep into this. Like let's just go straight into this black hole of, you get those moments usually around your birthday. You're like, how did I get this age? Or like you said, how did we get to this season already in the year? And the month or the season or the year or the age, just kind of like you just have this moment of self-reflection, right? And I feel like I'm having that now with you for some reason. You've got the red lippy on, you're looking all glam, and I'm just like, this for some reason, when you ask me that question, it's like I don't know where time is going. It's going so fast.
Oh, it is going so quickly. I have to agree with you there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your weekend flew by. Is that what you were saying? You couldn't tell me what you did because it just flew by. Yeah.
I don't think I did very much, but I did work on Sunday. I did work a little bit on Saturday, but I tried to relax as much as possible. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. I drove. I drove to Cardiff, and I'm with my parents' house at the moment. Hence the reason. It's always a different background with me, isn't it?
It is. That's all right. That's fine. So you're in Cardiff at the moment.
I am. Yes.
Yeah.
What about you? How was your weekend?
Very good. It was Mother's Day here in Australia. So, well, I got spoiled as mothers do. So I got flowers, I got a handbag, I got a sunglass holder, and a beautiful colored belt that I was just after that matches my handbag. All matchy matchy. That's me.
I love that. Well, for those of you who don't know, I'm just gonna put it out there, Kelly, just for more people to get to know you a little bit better. Kelly she's got such a keen eye for fashion, for how people look aesthetically. I say people, like herself. She'll like look at other people going, "Ooh, what are they doing? And how are they doing it well? What can I get from that?" And it's like, she's looking at like body shapes, and she's like, I feel like for most people who don't know, you're very curious about what looks go with each other, right? And your
colors. What colors go well, all colors can. You just got to put it together in a way that makes it work. And when you say body shapes, I do look at body shapes, but not how to change that body shape, how to dress that body shape. So yeah, it all interests me. It's like a little jigsaw puzzle of life.
Yeah. And do you find, like, I remember we had this conversation ages ago on the podcast and we said, how did it get from women bitching about women until we are now at a point as women supporting women? And I feel like when I was younger, especially with the types of people that you tend to hang out with, because you can't really choose your school friends at that point.
No, you can't.
And there's very much oh, look what she's wearing, or da, da, da. And then there's very much an ongoing critique, right? And you kind of want to be a part of that group. So you would contribute or not, or be an observer of that. And I feel like now, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but tell me if you do this the same, is like When I look at somebody, I'm like, oh my God, I love her hair. Or, oh, look at her outfit. Oh, she's carrying that really well. She looks so pretty. And
I will go
instead
out of my
of
way to
saying it,
tell people that.
well, see, this is the thing. I'm not surprised that you would do that. I am getting out of my comfort zone to tell people out of the blue, oh, I love that dress, or you look really nice. And I've done it sometimes when I'm probably like uncaring, but then I realize how powerful energy is. So I'll just
Yeah.
say it in my head or give off that energy, and I know they'll receive it. It sounds really like woo woo-ish, but it's not to you and I know. But maybe
No,
the audience are
no.
probably like, what? I'm like, no, think something positive. You send out
Absolutely.
vibrations and repercussions
Yeah.
into the universe. And it's so
Yeah.
funny I say that. Me and Ford, because Ford is our guest, we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
diaphragmatic breathing today. He is our guest today, and we actually talk about this energy vibration out into
Really?
the world. Yeah, yeah.
I'm a big believer of it. I've felt it. I've experienced it. I've experienced the vibrations you get off someone else, and I've experienced sending out vibrations to people to change the way they feel about you, about experiences, or call me. I'm thinking of you,
Yes. And you know what? The funny
right?
thing is, maybe it's not so woo. I'm like underestimating our audience because the thing is, has anybody, whoever's listening, have you ever walked into a room and you're like, wow, what happened here? Like you can cut the tension with a knife. But then on the flip side, if you're aware of that tension, you're also aware of the high vibration, positive joy. But I don't think we cultivate it enough. So when you just said about how you can then send out messages of positivity, vibration, joy, happiness. So I feel like we're so busy going, oh, yeah, I felt that something was going on there. But they really do it the other way around, where they're like, actually, I just feel really good around this person. And how can I cultivate that more?
Yeah, yeah. I recently went to a conference where the whole room had that vibe. I guess we'll call it a vibe, even though that does sound woo woo. But that feeling, they had a whole feeling about it, and you couldn't help but smile and be so engaging with people. Sometimes when you go to a conference, you don't, it's not easy to engage with people. I went there, I was the only person that I knew that was there, and I had the best time. So yeah, met lots of people, and everyone was really engaging, and it was just the energy of the place, really good.
Yeah, and it really does help raise your own energy. And
Oh,
we
for sure.
always say about our environment, right? If we're in a safe, loving, fun environment, we bring out those qualities within ourselves, but we help others bring out that within themselves. So it's like this concoction of, I don't know, just positive neurons and neutrons and protons just firing away.
Oh, listen to us nerds. I know, but I agree. I absolutely agree with you. It's a great feeling, and I want it more and more. Whenever you feel it, you go, I want that more. I want more of
Yeah.
that.
And I think
Yeah.
we've mentioned this before in the podcast. For those of you who are long-time listeners, we adore you. But we have said before that we find the same thing when we converse.
Yes.
So if you're feeling this vibration, if you're watching us or listening to us, comment below. Tell us if you're feeling this crazy woo-woo energy too. Okay. So Kelly, what is your biggest
Yeah.
win in this past 7 days or since the last time we spoke?
Am I allowed to talk about the same person over and over again? Because you know what I did last Friday, don't you? Yeah. So, 101-year-old Bill was his family want him to write a book about his life, and he's like, I don't have the time. I'm a busy man, he says. So, so he goes, I don't really want to do that. So, um, anyway, the reason they want him to is because some of his stories are a little bit different to history. He can set things straight. Some of his stories are completely different or just unknown. And so it's really important that we know these things, right? Anyway, when he said that, I'm really busy, man. I don't have time to write a book and I don't really want to. And I said, there's so many modern day ways to do it. You can speak into a microphone. We can do a podcast series of Bill's life. We can get a film crew out here and film it. And he goes, ooh, can we get a film crew out here and film it? I'm like, well, that was of all the options, that's the most expensive one. I know. Yes, absolutely. So we got a film crew out and we spent the whole day and deep into the evening filming Bill, sitting in front of a camera and showing his, or talking about his experience, but showing photographs of the times and things like that. Yeah, of his time from growing up in a little town called Underwallop, Overwallop, Overwallop, I think it was, Overwallop in the south of England, to joining the Air Force, being shot down, being a prisoner of war, coming back, being court-martialed for surviving. And then he didn't want to live in England after being court-martialed, and yeah, and then moving to Australia with his English wife and his 101 years worth of life. And he said, I didn't want to bore anyone, so I cut it down. I'm like, no, we'll have to get the film crew out now because this is not boring. This is awesome. So the film crew, we just bought a day's worth of filming, and they said, we actually wouldn't mind doing a documentary series on him. 101, guys, think about it fast. But yeah, so anyway, that's what I did, and I sent you the photo, didn't I, of Bill being a legend. And he just showed up for everything that we wanted to do. And that's him in front of his quilt of valor. Oh, look at him.
That's amazing. What an honor, like, to hear those stories.
Oh, completely. But look at that little face.
Yeah, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, you can see the picture. And if you're listening to this, head over to YouTube because you can actually see how amazing he looks. He's got the biggest smile on his face. And what was the word that you described? Because I said to you, didn't I, can we get him on the podcast?
Yes.
And I said, what does he say about health and wellness? You gave a really good.
Yes. Well, he said, choose to be happy. Choose happiness. Yeah. So even when he talks about his time in the POW camp, he calls it, it was in Poland. He was freezing cold. He had one boot when he parachuted out of the airplane, and he got the wind grabbed him. He landed in a marsh. The wind grabbed him, pulled him through trees and marshes and everything. One of his boots came off. So when he was captured the next day, he had one boot, and he had to march 358 miles to the prisoner of war camp. Yeah, with one boot on. And I went, how do you do it? He goes, I don't even know. You just do. You make friends along the way. I know, right? And it's such an attitude. He really does have such a catchy, infectious giggle and attitude. He says the way he explains all of that attitude is choose to be happy.
I love that.
It's good.
And the funny thing is, yes, it is a good life. And this is the thing. It's like, we're not here for a long time, so make the most of it.
Well, he said 101 years has gone really fast, let alone a weekend.
There you go.
So he said, yeah, it's gone really fast.
And that's why we need to convince him to do a podcast with you, Kelly. So take your laptop and we'll do.
Yeah, I'll see him again tomorrow. Yeah, we might do that. Oh, he's just so onto technology. I told you he wanted to PayPal me, didn't I?
No.
I bought him some biscuits from the grocery store, and he said, how much do I owe you? I said, no, it's a gift. He said, no. How much was it? I'll PayPal you. Do you have a PayPal? I'm like, I don't. But he does.
Oh my God.
His iPhone. He's got an iPhone. PayPal's me.
What a hero.
He just transferred, yeah. He's got Facebook. He's got Instagram. I know.
Follow him. Right. For those of you who are listening, engage with us. Would you want to hear from Belle, who is 101 years old with immense stories? So if you do, press yes in the comments below, because otherwise we're not going to do this podcast. Okay.
Okay. All right. What was your what made you smile this week?
Oh, I was gonna ask you that one. What made me smile this week? You know, it's gonna be cheesy, and I'm gonna go with cheesiness. Basically,
yeah, love cheesy.
It was really, really cold actually in Northamptonshire. So obviously my place is near Silverstone. For those who know, in England, it's in Northamptonshire. It was really cold, so I stuck on a jacket, like a really heavy coat. I went for a walk because I was like, no, I need to go for a walk. I need to get some fresh air. And I kind of just sprinted through
Is
it.
this where all the beautiful purple flowers were?
No, that was somewhere else.
Oh, okay. That's a story for another day. All right, keep
For
going
another
with your
day.
story. That
So
was freaking
basically,
beautiful.
yeah, so basically I was like, oh, I'm just gonna chill out and then I'm gonna drive to Cardiff a little bit later in the evening to try and like avoid traffic. And I'm sat in my flat and I'm just like, this all I'm really doing is I've packed. All I'm really doing is kind of like watching. Oh, so this is the other thing. I started watching Bridgerton.
Started watching what?
Bridgerton.
Oh, Queen Charlotte.
I first started watching Queen Charlotte because obviously
Yeah,
it's a big thing right now on Netflix,
it
and I
is.
absolutely
Yeah.
loved it. And I used to scoff at people watching Bridgerton, but I'm like, I'm actually interested now. So
Uh-huh.
only because
Uh-huh.
of Shonda Rhimes, she is my heaven sent guru who created
Mm.
Grey's Anatomy, who I was in
Mm-hmm.
love with that show since it first began.
Okay, yep.
And so as soon as I realized she created Queen Charlotte, I was like, oh, well, did she create Bridgerton too? Is that why people are raving on about
Oh,
it? Because she
Shondaland. Yes,
Shondaland,
she
yeah.
did.
So then I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to give it a go. But then I'm sat there in my flat going, I'm just sat here. Like, do I really want to just be sat here on my own? Like, let's just head to Cardiff. I swear to God, as soon as I started driving, and it must have been like maybe like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the longer my journey went on, the more the sun was shining. And my Google Maps took me on a scenic route. I was just in awe and I had the cheesiest smile on my face because I was like, oh, I'm so grateful that I get to drive amongst the scenic route. I'm so grateful that I get to bask in the sun. And I'm just driving and I'm just happy and I'm just singing Beyonce at the top of my lungs. And I'm just like, I'm just having the best time. And then since then, every day there's been sunshine. Like it's getting hotter and hotter. And I'm just like, I'm supposed to be here. You know, you just get this moment of like, what am I doing? Is this the right like path for me? And I just had the confirmation of this is exactly where you need to be. So that's what made me smile.
Yeah, that would have made me smile too. That's beautiful. I do love a road trip where you can put the window down and sing and go the scenic route. Sounds
Mm,
perfect.
It was like
Yeah, that would
proper
have made me
British
smile too.
countryside. It was gorgeous.
Oh,
What made you smile? Apart from the gorgeous build.
seeing your photo of walking through we would call it the bush in Australia. What do you call it? Forest?
Yes.
Walking through the trails of the forest with all these, like we have gum trees and fallen gum trees and crazy animals, but you have these beautiful velvet purple. What was it? What
Bluebells,
was
they
it?
only come out
Ah, bluebells.
spring, only come out in spring, and they just
Mm-hmm.
blossom, bloom, do as much as they
Gorgeous. They were
can.
everywhere.
And that's it. That's the only time in the season that they're going to come out. So they don't stay for a very long time. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
they are being as exactly how they should be just for that short period of time. It's
Oh,
stunning. A
you
blanket.
don't have snakes in England, do you? You don't have crazy reptiles. You just have little fluffy
We
creatures.
we do have these small like grass snakes or something like that, but
Oh,
I
do you?
luckily touch
But they're
wood, I
not
don't see
poisonous.
them.
Yeah. And they're not poisonous.
I don't think we have poisonous snakes here now.
Yeah. I don't think we have any non-poisonous snakes here.
Yeah, yeah. Australia is scary.
We do. Oh God, the cat brought a snake. He's brought two snakes into the house in the last week. I know. Like he's so proud of himself. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's no. Just no.
It's like, oh, look
Little
what
whip
I
snakes.
got. I'm so happy.
No, it's been a fabulous week, I have to say. And I will try to get Bill on the podcast, and you need to post more photos of those beautiful bluebells while they last. Because
Yeah,
that was
well,
spectacular. I just went, oh my God.
yeah, like
Is that in Wales or in
that
England?
was in England. I find like
Right.
you just go into the forest in England, just I saw like round the corner. And you know what? The funny thing is I had a thought that I wanted to go see bluebells in a forest, and I just hadn't got around to going out. So I went to go visit a friend, and as soon as we took a right turn into the woods, I was like, a blanket of bluebells just greeted me. And it was like the best surprise ever because I had no idea this part of the woods would actually showcase that. And I'll tell you another
Mm.
story offline. So that was actually like, ooh, okay, that's interesting. So yeah. Okay, so intention for the week. What is our intention? What is your intention for this coming week?
I put a post up on Instagram, and a lady that I used to coach many, many years ago, she was in a group, cystic fibrosis group, and she was the only one who did not have cystic fibrosis, but it was her age was about the capabilities of the younger people who did have cystic fibrosis. So she was an older lady in her 60s, maybe 70s even, but she was in with the 30-year-olds. She had fun. They had fun. She was lovely. And I, when I stopped coaching that, I lost contact with her anyway. She joined Instagram and followed me on Instagram at some stage, and she liked this post. And I wrote back, "Wait, Claire, I have been thinking so much about you lately," which I had. And here's what we were just saying: think about someone and they will contact you, or there's some contact, or there's some kind of synchronicity there. And I said, "I've been thinking so much about you and the other lovely ladies that I used to coach. How are you?" She said, "I live up near you now. I'm in a nursing home or a retirement village." And well, it's about an hour and a half away, but that's
still close. You're not in another
no,
country.
that's still close. No, that's right. And I said, "Well, I'll be in Brisbane for 3 days next week for work. Why don't I take you out for a fancy schmancy lunch?" And she's a fancy schmancy lady. Like, she'll have the right outfit for her, and she'll really enjoy ordering a nice dinner off her, or a nice lunch off her menu, not a cafe. And she was all for it. So it really made me smile. And on top of making me smile, my intention is to take Claire out for a really nice lunch. We're going on Sunday, and she's going to choose the restaurant, but she hasn't told me what it is yet. So anyway, I intend to have a really good time and a really good chat and a really good catch up, and make more dates with my lovely Claire. She must be deep into her 80s now.
Wow.
Maybe even 90. I don't know. I can't remember.
So I was going to say earlier that I love that because talking about energy, I believe we attract every single person in our life. Like, if you believe in afterlife, or, choosing your family, like being born into a specific family, or choosing your friends, I feel like everybody comes into your life. And I'm going to take this in another dimension, in terms of, we learn from everyone, and it could be good, it could be bad, whatever it is, we are learning from everyone. So you having Bill in your life, like, you're learning so much about him, right? Vice versa, he's a mirror to you, basically. So whatever good you're seeing in him, you're seeing in you. Whatever bad you're seeing in him, you're seeing in you. And now you look back to this not new person, but the person from your past is going, I'm not done with you yet. What more can I learn? And I find that so fascinating about not seeing people just for the sake of it, but having the intentionality of, what am I learning from this person? How can I get the best and the most out of this situation?
Yeah, no, that's a good way of thinking about it too. Not getting a cough. Oh, so intended not to do that. Right.
Oh, bless. So basically, at the beginning of the call, Kelly warned me she's got this dry, irritating cough. And a few seconds ago, I was like, she's doing really well. She's not coughing.
So it's your fault. She thought about it. She brought it on. You sent,
Okay.
the cough.
Let's move on to the hot topic of the day. I'm so excited about this one because the intention was, we're going to talk about diaphragmatic breathing. And let's just go into what that terminology actually means. Do you know specifically what it means? Because I had to look it up, Cal. I'm not going to lie.
Well, look, after our guest talks about this, and what he says is what I would also say, but I don't want to take away from him saying it. But it's breathing. It's just breathing, right? So you use your diaphragm to breathe. Sometimes people breathe a little bit shallow, and I call it sparrow breathing. So you breathe like a little sparrow, and you probably get to your collarbones and don't fill up your lungs. But diaphragmatic breathing, I think, is a term that was used to encourage people to breathe and use their diaphragm to push down, create that pressure, and then to breathe out as well, because when you breathe in, you also have to breathe out. So it's encouraging people to learn to breathe out as well. So that's what I say diaphragmatic breathing is, and that's the way I coach it. But truly, it's breathing.
Agree, completely agree. And we do talk about this with Ford, our guest. So I'm not going to give away too much, but we do talk about breath work can be both active and passive. And he explains a little bit more, so I'm not going to delve into that. But I feel like sometimes what we end up doing is we're not being intentional with our breath. So when circumstances arise in our environment, if something, especially when they're unexpected, it ends up taking our breath away, right? Or allowing us to breathe with fast, vigorous, short, shallow breathing because maybe we feel not in control of the scenarios and the environment. So I feel like in those moments in particular, we can be very intentional, but for such a long time, we've not been intentional with our breath because we take it for granted. We take it for granted that it's passive, but we have to be intentional and active with our breath. And those are the moments that you can find more clarity. You know, when they say, if you can take in deeper breaths, or you can go out in nature or just look at the horizon whilst you're doing that, your pupils dilate. You're able to take in more things and you're able to see that problem or situation with more clarity. And I feel like a lot of times we narrow our vision and we end up constricting our breath. So we're not improving the oxidization or oxygenation around our body. So if you think about it, if we're working out, you do this a lot with your athletes, Cal, and you do this with your elderly population. You're talking about breath work with such intention that you're going, well, we're enhancing performance at this level, right?
Yeah, at that level, exactly. Yeah, you can always improve no matter what level you're at.
And that's the thing. It's like, it's not only if you're doing it while you exercise, you're improving the oxygen around your muscles, you're enhancing endurance, and then you're reducing that level of fatigue. So I was really tired yesterday. And then for some reason I forgot, actually, if I'm feeling really tired, instead of deeper breaths, do the fire breath. Like I would do breath of fire. And for the people who don't know what that is, head over to YouTube or Google it. I probably do have it on my channel, shameless plug, on tulsi.coach. So if you wanted to find out if if you're feeling tired at the end of the day, maybe just do some diaphragmatic breath of fire breath work, belly breathing, so you can actually enhance that focus and creativity. Just improve your lung capacity, your respiratory function, just generally.
Yeah, absolutely. I've lost what I was going to say.
Okay, so I'm going to add in. No worries. No worries. What I was going to add in, we were talking about your 3 babies, managing your breath through pain and discomfort. Why do they do those specific breath works for women who are in labor?
Oh my gosh, it was so incredibly helpful to know that the breath in opens up your pelvic floor and you can breathe your baby out. So you don't breathe in and then push your baby out through. When you breathe out, the pelvic floor lifts and closes, right? And you're trying to push a baby out through a closed, tightened pelvic floor. If you push your baby out with the out breath, you breathe in, you fill your lungs up, and you push your baby just slides out.
Did you say you didn't have any drugs when you were?
That's right.
And you did this through breath work?
Yep.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's so empowering.
And if you think about it, we're tensing that body. Like say for example, I don't know if anybody's going to feel this, but this is the only example that I was coming to mind at this moment is a boxer about to be hit and they kind of hold their breath and they have that tension and they have their guard up, right? So I feel
they're bracing, yeah?
They're bracing. Thank you, Kelly. We end up feeling when there's fear, when anxiety, when there's tension in our body, we're tensing our organs, we're tensing our muscles, we're forgetting, we're not just tensing us, we're tensing everything inside of our body. And what this tension is causing is that our digestive organs are kind of like grinding with one another, if you think about it, right? It's almost like we're not nourishing it with the oil that we need. And as soon as we let our breath go and relax, we're easing the tension in our digestive system, our organs, and actually breath work can resolve a lot of that, the tension in our gut, in our bowels, and some of the disorders and diseases that we end up accumulating because of stress, right?
Yeah, can do. So breathing also relaxes the vagus nerve that runs down the side of your neck and wraps around your stomach like little fingers. And yeah, when you're tense, the nerves tense up, and that's why it affects your digestion. But stomach is also the organ of anxiety, right? So you're not allowing any movement there, and that bracing or that tension or that ready for something to come and hit me, not being a boxer, but just ready for a punch from life, um, uh, stops. Like the organs are actually, they don't just float there, they're all joined together with fascia and ligaments and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you breathe, your organs, when you breathe well, your
Mm-hmm.
organs will move up and down as well, which is very healthy for them. So it's like in a pool of water that is moving and being refreshed, rather than a stagnant pond where nothing moves and nothing gets refreshed. So think about which one would be healthier for your organs, right? The more where
Amazing.
things move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that analogy. So thank you so much for, oh, you said it so well. Okay, everyone. So let's move on to our guest, Dr. Ford Dyke. He is a professor and he talks about mindfulness and human performance optimization. He does breath work, and he is the ideal guest to talk about diaphragmatic breath work, why we should change our terminology when it comes to that, and yeah, a few more little bits of information and nuggets. So let's head over to Dr. Ford and let us know if you resonate with this in the comments box.
Brilliant.
I want our audience, thank you so much first, Ford, for joining us on this podcast, for coming on as a guest. So the idea is we're going to talk about meditation and breath work, but I feel that this conversation sometimes might veer into different avenues. So we're just going to see how it goes, and our audience, just bear with us. It'll relate to health and wellness, we promise. But before we get into the hot topic of the day, I want Ford to introduce himself. He and I actually met in, was it 2020 or 2021?
I think it was 2020, Tulsi. And then 21 is when, yeah, you were on my show.
Yeah, it was during COVID. We were kind of like doing our social, like Zoom meetings, meeting different people all around the world. And I was completely taken aback with Ford, just because like he's a professor. He'll tell you more about it, but like coming from a professor, coming from, you know, like he's highly educated, he's got really good knowledge, he's highly experienced, got an athletic background. But for me, we connected on a different level. And I was just like blown away with how we just got on really, really well, right, Ford?
Absolutely. Very heartfelt. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Well, the thing is like I'm a bit ashamed now that it's taken us this long to come back online. So I had to coax you. I had to coax you. I had to bend your arm to get you to come on the podcast as a bribe to go, look, we need to get you on here. And you've been super busy at the moment. So before you say what you've been busy with, how are you? And tell us about yourself.
I'm doing very well. And for starters, thank you for allowing me to be invited into your space, your world in the podcast domain. You know, it's always an interesting conversation. And like you said, who knows where it will go, but I'm always grateful for opportunities to get on and share perspectives. You know, I think people see me as this subject matter expert because of my education or because of my titles as a professor and a performance coach, and you know, my background as a Team USA athlete and all this stuff, like all these accolades, all these titles, all these roles and responsibilities. But all of that to the side, I'm a human being, you know, and I think that's what I try to be very intentional with, is that you and I are 99.9% alike, you know, and just off the air, we were talking about, I'm a white male and you're not. However, there's so many similarities that we both share that create the equal basis for what we are as human beings. And to me, in my background and my experience, it's the fact that, well, we all breathe and our hearts are beating and our brains are thinking through our mind. And that understanding, then we can throw all the other nonsense to the side and really focus on what's so similar about us versus what's so different about us. I don't know if that's a good enough intro, but that's what I'll just start with.
Okay, so I just elaborate on that. You still didn't tell us about you and what you're doing, but the good thing is you took it in a different direction. So for me, I'm just going to interject and just be like, okay, well, the majority of people when they interact, isn't it predominantly about what they've got in common? So you're more likely to get on with somebody who, say, for example, is born in the same city as you grew up in, or in the same, you're going to get on with somebody who is from the same country, for example. And I'm just going to add on to what you just said about, you know, us having so much in common. That caveat would be, aren't we souls just having a human experience?
Oh yeah. Yeah, now it's getting to the next level. I think what's interesting too about the notion of we get along with people that are familiar to us, that are comfortable to us. You know, that's probably a genetic predisposition that we have from a survival standpoint. You know, going back a long time ago with ancestors, if you looked a little different, then we were unsure. You could potentially be a threat to our space, our tribe, essentially. And now it's weird because we're such a globalized society, and these borders that were once placed on the map, in a way, they don't really exist anymore. They exist in our mind and oftentimes in our heart and our soul, but physically, there's not borders in the sand. There's not lines drawn of I live in this state, in this country, in this city, in this town, in this street, in this house, in this room, and on this podcast. I mean, you're on the other side of the world basically right now, across the pond, and we're connected. And it may be by way of digital means, innovation, technology, but we're connected more than that. When you take a deep breath, I can exhale, or if I exhale, you can take a deep breath. And there's interconnection there, and our thoughts are connected and our frequencies are connected, whether we're aware of it or not. That's the basis of the human experience.
And just to add on to that, I feel like I completely agree with you, but it's not just that breath and energy. It's we match each other's frequency on something that probably everybody can relate to is when somebody gets excited or you're with somebody maybe a little bit quieter, you match their energy and you do it without thinking, you know, being consciously aware of those things. I did it with my friend. She is the type of person who is like very, very quick, and then she speaks really quickly, and then she's going to go from one thing to the other, and she just picks up the volume and her pace and things like that. What I found out is I was doing the same thing when I was responding back to her, and I'm like, I don't talk like this. I can't think this fast. And then I thought to myself, wait a second, I was just mirroring her. And it takes a big energy to kind of like, and people aren't aware of this, to shift that. So the space that we're in, it can happen online. You know, we're matching that online. I know me and Kelly definitely do that with the podcast. She's the other side of the world in Australia, and I'm in the UK. And whenever we're on a call with one another, the vibration of both of us accelerates.
Yeah, it's so cool.
It's incredible. And then we leave the podcast recording on a high. And I remember watching, just kind of like editing purposes and reviewing the content and things like that. I'm rewatching the content that we post, and I'll still get giggles, or I'll still get that energy. And I'm like, oh, this is translating through YouTube and that experience.
Yeah, two things on that. You know, one point is within our physiology, we have specialized neurons, and they're called mirror neurons, like a mirror that you're looking into. And these mirror neurons are basically, their job is essentially to mirror someone else that you are observing. So if you were to be practicing a certain skill, like if you're teaching your yoga class, as I'm going through your class, whether we're on a screen or not, or if I'm in person, you don't even have to be giving me verbal feedback. The nonverbals of your body and your kinesthetic space my body and my kinesthetic awareness will pick up on that because my brain is processing through mirror neuron information how to perform that specific movement. Point two, when you're talking about energy exchange, there's an institute called the Heart Math Institute. Heart as in the organ, math as in mathematics institute. And they've got some really fascinating research out right now. And I know just before we jumped on, you were talking about research that isn't necessarily published in mainstream media sources or in, white papers. They're a little unorthodox, and they make certain academicians uncomfortable because they don't follow certain models that fit in academia. And I reside in academia, so I understand where they're coming from. The point of it is to bring them up. They have tools now that measure heart frequency through electromagnetic waves. And they've assessed a 6-foot circumference around one human to the next. But it's only 6 feet because that's the amount of distance the actual technology can measure. So it could potentially be 7 feet. It could be 15, 20, 30 feet. Who knows? But they're putting these sensors all around the world in various countries, measuring the global, social, and energetic connectivity of our planet as human beings, and potentially taking it to the next level with animals and plants and different organisms.
See, I didn't know
you're
that.
Right to connect with Kelly in Australia. Like that's
for sure.
That's yeah.
And I say I didn't know that, but I remember watching a documentary by David Attenborough, who's huge in the UK, and he's just got a voice that kind of...
Oh yeah, he's huge around the world.
Okay, good. I remember
he's massive.
I had to explain to somebody who David Attenborough was.
Oh, no,
he's a legend. How do you not know who
he's a legend?
Is?
Definitely.
But basically, he was talking about the forests in the UK as an example, because he normally goes all over the world, Galapagos Islands and all these Mediterranean islands and all these tropical rainforests around the world. But I found this one documentary very interesting because it was based in the UK, and sometimes you don't know how incredible nature is in your own backyard. And one of the topics of the conversation was the forest and how trees communicate with other plants within that forest. And they called it that worldwide network, web network that the forest and the plants have with one another. So if one is deficient in something like water, hydration, if it needs all these different things, it will send communication to the mushrooms, to the other plants, to the trees, and whatever one has, an abundance of, it will translate and help the other. And it's the same with animals who are eating the plants. Is if the animals are eating so much of the plant where it's deteriorating, the plants will send off a signal just to go, okay, we're now going to change our taste and flavor so it can be a little bit toxic or
protect itself.
So it protects itself so it doesn't actually go out of existence. And I just found that fascinating. So looking at the vicinity of our energy, so I'm going to bring it to the hot topic of the day. And obviously we don't have to stick to this, but it reminds me of Dr. Joe Dispenza is very much in the field of research. So he doesn't classify meditation as the spiritual side of things. He focuses on the science because he wants to reach a broader spectrum of people. And he feels that the more people are of the sound, body, mind, logical, scientific aspect. So he approaches them in that aspect. But for him in particular, he said that he's got maybe 1,000 or a couple of hundred people in this auditorium, all meditating all at the same time. And then the vibration of that actually accelerates out to the whole venue. And it could be a hotel, it could be wherever area it is. But the people who aren't even a part of the meditation feel the effects too. And then there's another one that says, if a group of people are meditating on the other side of the world, for somebody on the, wherever they are, they can feel the effects of the meditation. So, okay, we can't measure it, but how do we explain that?
I think it's through practice. One thing that I always share with students or athletes or any audience, it's one thing to talk about the research and talk about the science that's driving these questions, but research doesn't prove anything. Research essentially provokes more inquiry. That's the basis of research. It's not to answer questions. And I think the layman outside of academic institutions and industry-based research facilities, they lose sight of that. Popular science will state science proves XYZ.
Yeah.
Well, science doesn't prove anything. Science makes suggestions and provides evidence towards a potential outcome for that initial question. So I say all that because I don't think it's going to ever be measurable, and I don't think it matters. I think what matters is proving it to yourself and practicing these different techniques and paying attention closely. The key is closely to how you feel. And I believe personally, through my professional experience, that's the power of mindfulness techniques. Is it opens your mind, it opens your heart, it opens your spirit, it uplifts your soul. It basically elevates you and optimizes you as a human being to be able to tune in not only to your own internal environment, but the environment that's happening in and around you as well.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a kind of controversial question. If somebody is listening to this podcast, and I know I've heard of people who've said similar things of, I just can't get into meditation. I just can't do it. I don't get it. I don't feel the effects of it. How would you try and convince them that meditation and hand in hand with diaphragmatic breathing and breathwork techniques, because I feel like they can go in hand in hand. How would you help them buy into how beneficial meditation is for them?
Yeah, I think it's beneficial for different people for a variety of reasons. I think, again, the research will tell you one thing, the positive outcomes or the effects of meditation or mindfulness training, as an example, or even diaphragmatic breathing, which we'll get to that in a moment. I think that's redundant, by the way, just as a teaser for what we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But I think with mindfulness training, if someone says, I don't have time, or, it seems mystical, or, I don't really understand the effects. I tried it 3 times and I just, my mind is wandering. I can't sit still. And I've heard it all. I should write a book on the excuses that I've heard from people, and that's fine. I don't think this is some sort of rocket science by any means, but it's something that's been around on our planet for over 3,000 years. So clearly there's some value to it. So why don't we maybe try it? And in order to try it, I don't suggest to anyone that they need to do it for a specific period of time. And after that time, they're going to be set. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, I won't call out the names of these different mobile apps, but there's mobile apps out there that suggest after 30 days, quote, you will feel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it's, that's a little bit tough because I don't think that's true. Instead, what I try to suggest to people is to do nothing. And they look at me and they're like, wait, do nothing? I say, yeah, just do nothing for 60 seconds. It's one revolution of a clock from the 12 around to the 12. Watch the clock or set a timer for 60 seconds, whatever you want to do, and just do nothing. And I think when you tell a modern human to do nothing for 60 seconds, that's a very informative and very powerful space of time that they then realize there's a lot of work to be done. Mm-hmm. So I won't even reference it as, quote, meditation or, quote, mindfulness training. I'll just first say, if they are interested or they have any apprehension or hesitation, hey, let's just try to do nothing for 60 seconds. And then let's have a conversation of what came up in your mind or your body or both in that moment of time.
I love that you said that, because I'd obviously heard about meditation, not as much as obviously years on investigating about it, but coming to that near burnout, I keep saying it was near burnout. It wasn't official. It wasn't classified as official. It wasn't medically diagnosed. And it was probably a trending term at the moment in society, but I felt it, right? I felt emotionally, physically, mentally depleted to the point where I love moving my body. And when it came to wanting to move my body, I was so physically and mentally exhausted. I was like, I want to move, but I can't. And it was just like, a ton of weight. And people who know me, I'm buzzing like most of the time. So if I'm not buzzing, it's like somebody's taken my Duracell bunny like batteries out, and it's just like, oh no, she's died.
What's wrong with Tulsi? Yeah, exactly.
So for me, the reason I brought that up is because I kept waking up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would just wake up at that time and then ruminate over those thoughts, over those problems, over those issues. I would think about work, I would think about what needs to be done, or I think about, the issues that have happened in the past. And what I found out was I found this really long, it was like a 10, sometimes an 8 to 10 hour music on YouTube. So I would plug in my tablet and I would just let YouTube just play continuously. So what I was trying to do in that time, as I didn't call it meditation, I probably just called it, yeah, it probably would have been meditation, but I wasn't actively doing anything. My purpose was, how can I quieten my thoughts in order for me to get to sleep? So how can I lull myself to sleep by just focusing on the music, nothing else? And then when I did wake up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, it would be okay because the same music would still be cycling on. And then I would have to repeat that pattern in order for me to get back to sleep. So that was my methodology. I had to do that for 6 months before I found the effects of me going, oh, I'm having a good sleep now. Oh, great. I've got better concentration, better focus. I'm able to, concentrate a lot more. I'm a little bit happier. I'm able to belly laugh. And that wasn't me trying to meditate. That was me just trying to quieten my thoughts. And I feel like what you just explained right there is we're so busy. We've got, technology at the tip of our fingers, 24 hours a day. We've got demands with our family, with our work, everything else is going on. So how do we get to that point where I don't know, Ford, have you ever got to a point where you just kind of stare into the horizon and you just like, do you remember those times as a kid? Like I remember before technology, I'm just, speaking my age now. Yeah, I'm old. But where you just like, you didn't have technology to kind of scroll. You would just literally you'd wait for a friend when you're hanging out and you just like stare and just people watch. Like you wouldn't be thinking anything. You wouldn't be narrating anything, but you just stare at people or just watch the world go by. People are like, oh, I don't have time for that.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. It's kind of counterintuitive, to think about that. And it's a matter of knowing that time is a constant. Like we know that time will continue to tick. We can't really slow it down. We can't really speed it up. And if you can, you should send me an email because we have a conversation about that. I mean, I don't think that's even possible. But what we do have more control and modulation of is our energy, from a point of how much rest and recovery are we getting? Are we hydrated? Are we able to nourish our bodies optimally? Can we breathe correctly? Are we able to move, with mindful movement and looking at it as a way to provide a holistic approach to our life, through not just health and wellness, but performance and productivity. And I think those facets, they go hand in hand. You can't really have performance on one side and neglect your health and wellness. And you can't focus too much on health and wellness because then you're never really going to have a behavioral output that's optimized. So they're interdependent, and one affects the other. And when you touched on meditation or mindfulness training or, just turning on something for 8 hours and letting it play, the way I frame up the 60 seconds is it's very similar to active versus passive stretching. So passive stretching would be you have someone with you. Think of like, as an example, a physical therapist or a physio, and they are moving your body through those ranges of motion. That's passive. They're asking you to relax. They're physically moving your limbs through those planes. Active stretching is you are actually engaging that musculature and engaging those limb segments to move through those movements. Well, this notion of mindfulness training or meditation, it can kind of be broken down that way as well. Active versus passive. Passive would be doing nothing for 60 seconds and paying attention to what's happening. Active would be something like, in that 60 seconds, we want you to focus on your inhalation and or your exhalation. And that's it. Now, your mind is going to wander. Our frontal lobe is huge in comparison to other mammalians. It's really what makes us who we are as human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens. And if we're able to then tune into where our mind is going and create space and distance between a wandering thought or a rumination that's distractive or, we're thinking about yesterday's to-do list or next month what we want to accomplish. Okay, that's fine. That's going to happen. We're not stopping thought. If we're stopping thought, we're dead. We're done. Let's notice where our thoughts are, being able to observe them, potentially describe what's happening, stay in the moment with the inhalation and exhalation, and practice a non-evaluative or non-judgmental perspective towards what's going on. And if you're able to do that, you'll be less reactive. You'll be more responsive in nature. And those are essentially the 5 facets of mindfulness, which a lot of people are unaware of. It's observation, description, present moment awareness. In other words, the here and now, non-judgment, and non-reactivity. Rarely do people know why those pieces to the puzzle are arguably more important than sitting cross-legged, burning incense, eating grass, and driving a certain vehicle or wearing your hair a certain way. That's irrelevant. What's important is active versus passive and understanding the basis of mindfulness meditation and why is it that practicing this consistently can help your health, can help your well-being, and can help your vitality, which all affects performance and productivity.
Yeah, for sure. You said so much within that. It's a lot to unpack. And
Sorry, I'm pretty caffeinated
I love
right
it.
now.
I love this type of conversation because you're bringing in those elements that sometimes we just forget about. And I love the fact that you did say about being non-reactive, non-judgmental, your ability to observe and stay present. Because even though I said my intention was just to stop thoughts, like as kind of like just be an observer, it take me a very good few years, because even earlier this year I'm like, oh, I used to keep practicing meditation, but it's never perfect. And then I realized that it's okay to start from the beginning. So each and every meditation practice for me is I start at 0. And since I gave myself that allowance, I have far less pressure on myself to go, oh, I need to seek that enlightenment. And the other meditation I felt amazing from. No. Just this is 0. This is a new version of me today. I've woken up in this new version of me. I've learned way more than I did yesterday. I'm a different version of myself than I was a month ago, a year ago. Why do I expect these things to continually be the same experience? So I'm generating a new experience. But just going back to that breath work of being active and passive, and linking it with performance, like as coaches ourselves, like, you know, things like, I don't know, something so simple like boxing, tai chi, yoga, strength and conditioning, you know, if you're lifting weights or if you're practicing Pilates, they've all got breath work in common. Now, they don't necessarily say this is a specific exercise and this is how to breathe. They'll usually say, we're going to do this, and then you're going to add the breath work on top. You know, if you watch a boxer, you can actually hear them as they're moving. So you can figure out this is a boxer going through the motions because of the breath work. So if we look at active and passive breathing with mindfulness and meditation, how important is it to kind of be observant of the breath? And why do you think that is important? Because let's be honest, our breath and our heartbeat changes throughout the day, right? That's loads of people have got monitoring apps, fitness apps that tells them, you know, where is your body at? What's your heart rate doing? What's your resting heart rate doing? What's your HRV? All these different things. But sometimes people forget that it's a rhythm. It's not supposed to be stagnant. Otherwise, you're dead. You know, it's a rhythm of you're going to be up and down. There's going to be certain times where maybe you were in a meeting, your heart rate might accelerate, your breath work might accelerate. So what can you do in those aspects to even at that point be non-reactive, maybe?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people utilize wearables, and I always get that question of, you know, what wearable do you utilize? I have a G-Shock watch that tells me the time, and it's fantastic because when I'm traveling, I can just set the time zone, and that's it. I don't utilize wearables. I think wearables take you outside of building the awareness that you need to be in tune with your own physiology. Meaning, you asked, why is respiration so important to focus on? Well, our breath is always with us. We can't breathe yesterday. We can't breathe into tomorrow. We can only breathe literally right now, and right now, and right now, and right now. It keeps you in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the great conduit between mind and body. It's essentially what connects the brain to the heart. Literally. Vagal tone, the longest, most robust nerve in the body, is stimulated by way of a deep, purposeful inhale through the nose, specifically a slight pause at that top, and a slow exhale through the mouth. That's how vagal tone is stimulated. When vagal tone is stimulated, we become more parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is that rest and digest, where we're able to process information at a higher level. Our kinesthetic awareness is increased, which helps us with performance, which helps us with our health and wellness because cortisol is beginning to drop down. There's so many, I mean, there's a laundry list of things that are beneficial when it comes to respiration. I think of respiration as the fulcrum. And if you focus on the fulcrum, the seesaw up top will always be in balance, right? If you're only focused on the seesaw or what's sitting on top of the seesaw and you neglect the fulcrum, it's going to be swinging up and down and up and down. You're going to ride this crazy wave. But if you focus on the fulcrum, the inhale, the pause at the top, and the exhale, now you have control of what's going on inside from an internal physiological anatomical standpoint, as well as outside from an environmental aspect as well.
I love that you basically just answered the question that I was going to ask, is how does diaphragmatic breathing enhance meditation experience and contribute the state of mindfulness? You've literally just nailed it on your head.
But to add to it,
yeah,
the reason I mentioned earlier, Tulsi, that I think diaphragmatic breathing is a little bit redundant.
Why?
What I meant by that is when we breathe, meaning when we inhale and or when we exhale, our diaphragm is being utilized. Mm-hmm. It's a muscle. Mm-hmm. Remember several days ago when you were asking me to come on the show, I said, oh, I'm all about the diaphragm. What I meant by that is there's this misunderstanding between respiration, this physiological function that just is happening. You know, we're not really having to mind the store. I don't have to sit here and say, internal forward, please take an inhale now. Uh-oh, you better exhale next. You know, it's going on. It's automated.
Yeah.
But we have full control of our respiration by way of the intentionality behind it. The only other thing that happens in our body automatically that we have control of is blinking. I can tell you to stop blinking. You can just close your eyes.
Yeah.
Or you can keep your eyes open for as long as possible.
Yeah.
So those two physiological functions we have full control of. Blinking, not as impactful necessarily as the control and modulation over respiration. But diaphragmatic, it just seems like, why are we calling it something that then confuses people? If you have shallow breathing, it doesn't mean you're not using your diaphragm.
Yeah.
It just means you have shallow respiration and you need to work on strengthening the musculature within the diaphragm and focus more on the rib cage coming out of the actual abdomen versus, oh, I'm going to take a belly breath. Belly breath is improper breathing. You hear people say, put your hands on your belly and make sure your belly moves away from you.
Yeah.
That's not really what we want. We want the diaphragm to expand so the lungs are able to fill.
Yeah. It's in
and
Pilates.
Work through that respiration.
I started off saying put your hands around the
on
rib
the
cage,
sides, of the cage,
and then feel it expand that way rather than the top. What do they call it? The belly, the chest, the throat, and things like that. So it's that. But there's so much confusion out there. I feel like there's so many topics out there that there's so much information that butchers and confuses people. So hopefully this podcast helps people gain that clarity. And I think one of my questions I was going to ask, okay, so we're going to move away from that label diaphragmatic breathing, just call it breathing.
Let's call it respiration.
Let's call it respiration. So are there specific techniques apart from the one that we talked about, focusing on the rib cage, expanding outwards, just placing your hands in that rib cage, right? If people are watching on YouTube, you're going to see what we're doing. but if you're listening to the podcast, it's literally just feeling the rib cage on the side of your body, making sure the elbows are nice and wide, and just placing the hands as low down as you can. You're going to be able to feel the rib cage, and then just breathing, expanding into it, and then exhaling. But as you said, Ford, earlier, it's just taking note of the breath and feeling what the breath is doing, rather than over controlling and manipulating that breath. Like that to me, marry that up with the 60 seconds of breathing. It's you were just going to literally, the 60 seconds are going to fly because you're in that present moment. So you're focusing on nothing apart from the movement, and you're not manipulating, control, or judging anything. You're just figuring out, what is my body doing? And just as you said earlier, you don't actually need those apps, because I'm wearing a Whoop band, not associated or affiliated with them in any way, but it gives people the chance who wear it to say, what is my body about to do? Because usually it's, oh, I knew I wasn't feeling well, and Whoop has confirmed it with the data, not the fact that, oh, Whoop has told me I'm in the red zone now. Oh, I better slow
the
down.
other way around, right? Yeah,
it needs to be enhancing your intuition. And so, going back to the question of, what are some other techniques or exercises that we can do ourselves to enhance our breath work?
Mm-hmm.
Our respiration.
Respiration. It can be practiced in a variety of contexts, in a variety of ways. You can be seated, you can be standing and walking, you can be in a steam or a sauna, you can be in a shower, you can be doing dishes, you could be driving, you could be laying flat. Like, there's so many ways you can practice respiration, and I would encourage people to try it in a variety of ways, in a variety of environments and a variety of times throughout the day, and keep it simple. I think that's the biggest thing to remember, is that the more simple the practice is, the better able you will achieve success and you will feel results. It's just like a strength conditioning protocol, or it's just like a nutrition plan. Once it gets overly complex, people lose out and they're set up for failure. And I think we're doing a disservice if that's the case. So as simple as possible, focusing on the inhalation, pausing for a moment, focusing on the exhalation, recycle. Focus on the inhalation, pause for a moment, focus on the exhalation, recycle. And just try that 3 or 5 times, and pay close attention to how you felt before you started, during the actual practice, and after. And maybe even just write it down. Say, day 1, this is where I was. I was in a supine, or I was laying flat on my back. It was early in the morning. I was calm, cool, and relaxed. Okay, day 2. I was walking my dog, and I started to focus on 5 respiration cycles. And this is how I felt. Oh, and my dog relaxed a little bit too. Down leash. So there's so many different aspects to our life where we can apply respiration. It doesn't have to be this formalized practice that I think, unfortunately, has been advertised or marketed across various platforms.
I completely agree with you on that one. Thank you. That was so insightful, and obviously loads of tips there. I think that even for people who are beginning, can actually take that and apply it even whilst they're listening to this podcast. Like, you driving, take some deep inhales and just focus on where you are right now. I've ended up being a lot more conscious when I'm driving now. Just a kind of side note is I would just switch off the music, and I'd be driving for maybe 2.5, 3 hours, and I'll just be focusing on my breath. And I'm like, oh, that was a really good journey.
Well, you know that you're driving.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oftentimes when we're doing something like driving or walking or typing an email or doing the dishes, it's our mind wants to go into a different space. Mindfulness is essentially knowing that you're driving or walking or typing an email or doing the dishes. That's all it is. It's just being in the moment.
Agree. And I'm very conscious about what other drivers are doing, and I'm much more less judgmental about what they're doing. So it's almost like, oh, this person's abruptly changed lanes and now they are right in front of me. I'm going to fall back a little bit, or I'm going to switch lanes, or I'm just going to not let it affect me. And that's what I feel like the breath work does for me. Now, that's kind of leading me to the next question. It wasn't purposeful, but I wanted to basically ask about this day and age, like I said earlier, there's a lot going on social media. There's a lot of news coverage out there. And I don't pay that much attention to news stories. Maybe not breaking news. I'll eventually learn about it or read about it, but it's not something that I'll consciously go, oh, I need to wake up in the morning and put the news up so I can understand what's happening around the world. So with that in mind, our autonomic nervous system has an increased level of cortisol, right? We've got lots of demands around us. We probably are paying way more attention to other things rather than tuning into ourselves and our own breath. There is an increase of anxiety, stress, and as I mentioned earlier, burnout. So how can we then figure out how our respiration promotes relaxation during meditation? And why is that important?
I think to go back to what you said about the current state of affairs, we are rapidly moving through our days. We're hamsters on the wheel. We're cogs in the machine. And in order to step off that wheel, we have to be aware. We have to be intentional. And the only way to become more aware and more intentional is to tune into the present moment. It's truly all we have. We can't change yesterday. And as much as we plan, we don't really know what's going to happen to tomorrow. But we know what's going on right here, right now. I know that at noon, my time here in the States, I'm having a conversation with Tulsi on her podcast. I could care less what happened this morning. I did mat-based Pilates. I had brunch. I made some coffee. I prepared for my conversation with you. I could care less what's going on later on.
Yeah.
Walk the dog, have a nice dinner, do some stretching, relax for my week to start. Those things don't matter. Those bookends don't really matter. The morning has been finished. The afternoon and evening has yet to come. But what I know what matters is right here, right now. And how do I stay in that moment? If I get distracted or if I get pulled by a sound in my environment or something on the to-do list, just come back to the breath. The YouTube viewers can probably go back through this and see several times throughout this conversation, I've taken some purposeful inhales and exhales. And it's kept me where I am. I made a comment earlier. I'm pretty caffeinated. I made some single origin craft coffee this morning in preparation for an exciting conversation. But I know I can regulate my physiology. I don't have to be on that rat wheel. I don't have to be the cog in the machine. I can decide by way of my respiration. That's the key to mindfulness. That's the key to health and well-being. That's the key to performance and productivity. It's not mindfulness. It's not meditation. It's respiration. When we start to tune into that more, everything else falls into place. Not only speaking from experience personally, but also professionally in the various individuals, teams, organizations that I've worked with thus far. And I'm still early on in my career. So I'm excited to see how this transpires and how this moves forward because of the state of the world. I think the pandemic was a silver lining within this space of health and well-being. It really woke a lot of people up to the importance and significance of health and wellness and how that affects our performance and productivity. So I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but that's how I look at how do we leverage something so simple, something automatic, respiration, and use it as a tool and the key towards optimal performance, health, and well-being, vitality, longevity, sustainability, whatever you want to call it. That's the human experience. Without this, we have no key. We're going to run on the wheel. Before we know it, we've aged, and then it's over. We've transitioned. And the one thing that we all have in common as humans, Tulsi, is we all transition.
Yeah.
But none of us want to talk about it. None of us want to prepare for it because it's the unknown.
Yeah.
But it's really the known. We all know as organisms, we have a shelf life. But it's like, oh, we'll get to that. Let me hit this social media like real quick. Let me go do this task earlier. Let me make this meal. Let me jump on the... And it's just like, push that away, push that away, push that away.
You've left me speechless.
Sorry.
No, that's a good thing. That really happens. But what I wanted to ask is like a kind of like we can just keep talking for ages, and I probably will keep grilling you after we've stopped recording. But I just wanted to ask, as you were talking about the key to health and wellness, is so profound. I feel like that's probably a good thing to round up this conversation. But just one last thing, this profound, wise, I would call it epiphany, right? It's quite profound what you've just said. When did that even occur to you? When did it occur to you that you thought, I can't keep doing this. I now need to focus on my breath, on this present moment. Has there been a shift between where you were and where you are now? Like, tell me a little bit more about how you got from there to here, or have you always been a massive advocate about, I know obviously you're a coach, but you will have passion about physiology, but it's something else. I don't know. Is there a story behind how you found this is the key to wellness?
Oh gosh. I'm sure there was a specific moment that you could maybe pinpoint and and like stick on an advertisement and say this is it for Dr. Dyke. But I don't think that's true. I think it's probably a reflection of my entire life. And I've often thought of writing a book about this. But I need to be encouraged more because I feel like who the heck is going to read that,
I would.
But the short of it is I was on a podcast recently with Maureen. She is the host of Education Evolution. I met her out in Ecuador and she was asking me a similar question, like, where did this come from? And I said, well, if you look at my curriculum vitae and you see my educational journey from studying psychology as an undergraduate student, focusing on more sport psychology, more or less, and then moving into exercise science, studying kind of what was going on in the body, went from mind to body. And then in the PhD, psychophysiology, kinesiology, mindfulness, etc. That's the mind body connection. That's kind of putting those two together. You would think that even my gap year taking anatomy and physiology, you would think that it was super intentional and the road was kind of paved for me. But that's not the case. It was just, I enjoyed it and it felt right. And I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And as my mom always suggested to me, feel the pavement under your feet. Let your sails fill with wind. Like she would say these things to me. I'm like, poof, man, that's like kind of heavy, But I think it's been my whole life, Tulsi. I think the birth order of who I am in my family, what my family has experienced, what I've experienced personally as a Team USA athlete, traveling to 20-something countries, graduate education, professorship, performance coaching. It's everything, it's who I am. To circle back fully to my initial comment about I'm a human being. I'm not a professor title. I'm not a former athlete title. I'm not a performance coach title. I'm a human being, first and foremost. And I have all these experiences and I have all this education and I have these perspectives and I just package it up and use a lot of time inside through reflection and intention setting to try to make it as clear cut, digestible, understandable to as many people as possible. Because I truly believe the reason I'm on this planet is to get other people to see a different perspective and to get them to elevate their human experience. Because I know we're not here very long, but I want to try to be in the moment as much as possible and maximize these chapters, these decades of my life.
Wow. I love that. Okay, well, tell us, how can people get in touch with you if people obviously want to follow you on what you're doing? How do people get in touch and where are you? Where can you be found?
I can be found on the internet. Forddyke.com is my landing page and LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out. Again, I'm a human being. I'm not a robot. I will respond to you. I will love to have a virtual coffee with anyone that's interested in learning more. I mean, Tulsi, you can attest that's how we met essentially. And, you're over the pond and I'm over here and just having different conversations with different people and constantly learning. Again, I know I've got these 3 letters after my name, but at the end of the day, I'm now at a point where I realize I don't know a lot at all. I think when you finish a PhD, you think you know everything. And then you step outside of that, you're like, damn, I don't know anything. You know a lot about a sliver, right? And there's this whole other bandwidth that's yet to be explored. And I love learning from others in my field, but even more so outside of my field, and try to pick their brain and get different perspectives on how they see the world, how they see others, how we fit into this story called life.
I love that. And yeah, those words literally came out of my mouth to my brother this week of like, there's so much I don't know. There
Oh
is
yeah,
so much I don't know.
it's
And
overwhelming.
it was really overwhelming because I was like, but I want to learn about that, and I want to learn about that, and I want to learn about that. And most of it is outside of my career profession spectrum. It's just because I'm very curious about it. And
Right.
I'm just like, there are so many professionals in that arena. And I just came to that conclusion of I know nothing.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, I think it's part of the human experience is to continuously search for more knowledge and understanding of what it means to be a human and our impact on our own species, as well as all of the plants and animals that make up this amazing planet that we call home.
Agree. Well, Ford, it's been amazing to speak to you. Thank you so much for taking time out and allowing us to move the conversation from diaphragmatic breathing to more respiration. So thank you
Love it.
so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always an honor speaking with you. And thanks again for having me on the show.
Of course, we'll do it again soon.
Sounds great.
Bye. Oh my gosh, Cal, how amazing was our guest Ford?
Yeah, so interesting, right? Way more information than I expected to hear. So he's a clever man. I love the way he puts things. Describes things.
And it's such a shame that you couldn't join us on the call live because guys, we're trying to battle with America, UK, and Australia.
Yeah. Exactly.
But we will make it work. We will in the future. Anyway, let's move on to our health motivational tip of the day. What is your health motivational tip of the day, Cal?
Don't you think it should be breathing and being a bit more intentional with our breathing? So all right, I'll give you an example. When I write programs for the athletes, we will do exercises in the lower heart rate, like a zone 1 cardio. Breathe in and out only through your nose. So try to, when you walk, anything that's maybe under, oh gosh, it's so complicated with heart rate. Let's just keep it to an exercise. When you walk, try to breathe only in and out through your nose for about half an hour. See how you go.
I love that.
It's hard. It's harder than you think. You'll sort of fall back into breathing out through your mouth, or some people feel like they're suffocating a little bit and they'll need to take a big mouth breath, which is fine. Then take a big mouth breath. Don't get too anxious about not being able to do it. Take it for sure, but then practice a bit more about just breathing in and out through your nose. You should be able to breathe in and out through your nose and breathe deeply into your lungs as well.
I love that. I love that. And I'm going to tag on to that because if you're doing this for 30 minutes outdoors, try and do it every time you're listening. So instead of waiting for your turn to speak or trying to think of a question, just breathe. And I did this with Ford when I was interviewing him on my podcast. I don't know if anybody on YouTube has noticed, both of us, well, 2 times he kind of like left me speechless because I just genuinely wasn't thinking of a next question because I was so busy breathing and listening to him. So that's what ends up happening. It's like maybe the conversations might become a little bit more paused, but it's a good thing because you're being intentional and present in that moment. So yeah, I'm going to tag on to that. And that's my health motivational tip of the day. So thank you for instigating that health motivational tip, Kelly. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. You were amazing. Thank you so much again to our special guest, Ford Dyke. Dr. Ford, And again, if you found this podcast useful, comment below, share it with your family and friends. We would love for you to be part of our Patreon community. You can join for the price of a small cup of coffee. Hit the subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. Click the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. And remember, YouTube likes likes. So hit the like button so more people can find content like this on YouTube. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we'll see you on the next one. See you soon, Kelly.
Bye.